Let's all stand and remain standing. The court is now in session. Please be seated. On the occasion of the joint ceremonial sitting of the Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia, Division 1 and Division 2, for the announcement of the appointment of Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria.
I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands and waters where we meet today, the people of the Kulin Nation. I acknowledge their spiritual and physical connection with this country, and their stewardship of this land has been ongoing for tens of thousands of years. I express my gratitude for the sharing of this country, and I express my sorrow for the cost of that sharing. I wish to understand and respect the stories, beliefs and laws of First Nations people, and it is our hope that we may move towards a place of equity, equality and justice and reconciliation together. I pay my respects to elders for the work they do as they continue to lay the bedrock for the next generation of Aboriginal leaders. We commit to walk with the greatest of respect on their sacred lands. Mr. President.
May it please the court. I appear on behalf of the Victorian Bar. I have the honour to present to the court the following who have been appointed Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, and in the following order of seniority. Sir Richard Harris, having precedence as the most senior of the newly appointed Senior Counsel.
Is Mr. Harris in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence as the most senior of the newly appointed silk.
Sharon Lacey, having precedence next after Mr. Richard Harris.
Is Ms. Lacey in court?
I have the honour to announce that I've been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr. Richard Harris.
Ms. Helen Deletis, having precedence next after Ms. Sharon Lacey.
Is Ms. Deletis in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Ms. Sharon Lacey.
Mr. John Gurr, having precedence next after Ms. Helen Deletis.
Is Mr. Gurr in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Ms. Helen Deletis.
Mr. Dean Guidlin, having precedence next after Mr. John Gurr.
Mr. Guidlin in court?
I have the honour to announce that I've been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr. John Gurr.
Ms. Kylie Evans, having precedence next after Mr. Dean Guidlin.
Is Ms. Evans in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr. Dean Guidlin.
Mr. Luke Merrick, having precedence next after Ms. Kylie Evans.
Is Mr. Merrick in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Ms. Kylie Evans.
Mr. Travis Mitchell, having precedence next after Mr. Luke Merrick.
Is Mr. Mitchell in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr. Luke Merrick.
Mr. Paul Leondis, having precedence next after Mr. Travis Mitchell.
Mr. Leondis in court?
I'd like to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr. Travis Mitchell.
Mr. Simon Pitt, having precedence next after Mr. Paul Leondis.
Is Mr. Pitt in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Paul Leondis.
Mr Peter O'Farrell having precedence next after Mr Simon Pitt.
Mr O'Farrell in court.
I have the honour to announce that I've been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Simon Pitt.
Mr Hamish Reid having precedence next after Mr Peter O'Farrell.
Is Mr Reid in court?
I have the honour to announce that I've been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Peter O'Farrell.
Mr Matthew Follett having precedence next after Mr Hamish Reid.
Is Mr Follett in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Hamish Reid.
Ms Gabrielle Crafty having precedence next after Mr Matthew Follett.
Is Ms Crafty in court?
I have the honour to announce that I've been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Matthew Follett.
Ms Katina O'Gorman having precedence next after Ms Gabrielle Crafty.
Is Ms O'Gorman in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Gabriel Crafty.
Ms Tamika Spencer Bruce having precedence next after Ms Katina O'Gorman.
Is Ms Spencer Bruce in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Ms Katina O'Gorman.
Mr Richard Stanley having precedence next after Ms Tamika Spencer Bruce.
Is Mr Stanley in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Ms Tamika Spencer Bruce.
Mr Barnaby Chessel having precedence next after Mr Richard Stanley.
Is Mr Chessel in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Richard Stanley.
Mr John Tracy having precedence next after Mr Barnaby Chessel.
Is Mr Tracy in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Barnaby Chessel.
Mr Liam Brown having precedence next after Mr John Tracy.
Is Mr Brown in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr John Tracy.
Ms Fiona Spencer having precedence next after Mr Liam Brown.
Is Ms Spencer in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Liam Brown.
Ms Catherine Boston having precedence next after Ms Fiona Spencer.
Is Ms Boston in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Ms Fiona Spencer.
Mr Christopher Brown having precedence next after Ms Catherine Boston.
Is Mr Brown in court?
I have the honour to announce that I've been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Ms Catherine Boston.
Mr Sean Gladman having precedence next after Mr Christopher Brown.
Is Mr Gladman in court?
I have the honour to announce that I have been appointed as Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Christopher Brown.
Mr Rishi Nathwani having precedence next after Mr Sean Gladman.
Is Mr Nathwani in court?
I have the honour to announce that I've been appointed Senior Counsel in and for the State of Victoria, taking precedence next after Mr Sean Gladden.
Please the court.
Thank you, Mr. President. To your family and friends of the new Silks, can I say welcome. Starting today, November is no longer a month to be feared. When at school, there were time of exams. At university, it was even more a time for exams, particularly if perhaps one enjoyed the freedom of university far too much during the year. Then, of course, they got time for offers to firms, placements, and indeed, later, even bar exams. For a while, there seemed to be simply a time for bar council elections and getting briefs before the summer break. Then silk applications creep in. Should you apply? Looking at the reactions of some people that apply for silk year on year, perhaps you shouldn't. Who should be your referees? How will your application be looked at? And what will happen? So many choices. And of course, how cases have gone and the endless rumour mill perpetuated by the Essaying Club. Now, to your family and friends, can I say not only welcome, but you can be relieved to know that November is now no longer such a terrible month. Everybody will be happy. On behalf of the courts, can I congratulate each of the new appointed silks in and for the state of Victoria. It is a great time in your lives. This designation reflects your expertise, diligence and independence. It also acknowledges that you are seen by your peers and by the bench to demonstrate the highest calibre of ethics, skill and general legal representation as an advocate. Whilst history of becoming a senior counsel has changed over many years, its significance has never diminished, nor has the values it embodies. It remains incredibly important today. Becoming a silk is a great privilege. It also brings many responsibilities and an obligation to commit oneself to the highest standard of legal practice. Now as a silk, your independence and the independence of you as an advocate is even more important. In his swearing-in speech as Chief Justice in 1952, Sir Owen Dixon characterised it this way: "It is the duty of the barrister to stand between the subject and the Crown, between the rich and the poor, between the powerful and the weak, and it is necessary that, while the bar itself occupies an essential part in the administration of justice, the barrister should be completely independent and work entirely as an individual, drawing upon his or her own resources of learning, ability and intelligence, and owing allegiance to none. Our system of justice is synonymous or dependent upon the role of the independent advocate, now perhaps more than ever, and of course one's duty to the court, to the ethical and independent conduct, and of course the duty to one's client. Being an advocate, a member of one of our independent bars, and in particular the magnificent Victorian Bar, is not just wearing a wig and gown or becoming a member of a club. Signing the bar roll means a great deal more. And as a silk, your role as an independent advocate is an essential part of making the system of justice fair and equitable. You have the obligation, indeed the ability, to affect so many people's lives. When one enters the courtroom and bows, you're not bowing to a particular judge, although some judges from time to time may forget that, but you're bowing to the court and our system of justice. Your independence requires you to act appropriately despite the fanciful or querulous wishes of some litigants, or perhaps even some instructors. It is that judgment, that independence, that trust that ensures our system of justice. The courts depend upon the independence of the bar and your integrity as an advocate. Now, as members of the inner bar, the responsibility of preserving and perpetuating that independence falls upon each of you. It is a fundamental role in our system of justice and our rule of law. In addition to this, the junior bar will depend upon your guidance and your leadership. You are now leaders of the bar and experts in your areas of practice. Please be mindful of the example you set, not just in court, and be aware of the importance of mentoring and fostering a collegiate and inclusive environment. As appointment as senior counsel is a recognition of your proficiency in the law, but also your embodiment of the finest traditions of our bar. It also publicly identifies you as an advocate for whom excellence is expected. I have no doubt that each of you will discharge your duties to the court with skill and good temperament and continue to serve the public in an exemplary manner. We, as two independent courts, look forward to seeing you in our courts, whether it be in industrial or fair work matters, administrative law, intellectual property, human rights, or even admiralty. Also, of course, in the family law jurisdiction, in trials and appeals, we are now seeing some of the bar's most senior commercial and criminal lawyers, or silks, appear, especially in our major property lists, with very good family law juniors, of course. I congratulate each and every one of you once again on this significant achievement of being designated senior counsel in and for the state of Victoria. You are now part of a long and proud tradition, a tradition that's seen people like the great Richard Tracy be such a leader in our profession, and also Richard Stanley. May I also congratulate your family, friends and colleagues in the profession who have assisted you becoming silk. Enjoy this great achievement in your lives and enjoy it with them. Keep celebrating until you go to Canberra and enjoy the High Court sittings and meet the other leaders of the National Bar. And most importantly, wear your rosettes with pride, particularly in Sydney. See you at drinks tonight. Adjourn the court.
All stand. This joint sitting of the Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia, Division 1 and Division 2 is now adjourned.